What is up, everyone, and welcome to Drop In, where we have open, authentic conversations about all things mental health, including why don't men go to therapy? Dr. Jackie.
Hey.
Good to see you. How about some stats?
Give them to me.
13% of men on a yearly basis contact with a mental health professional compared to 25%. 1 in 4 in women. Men are also more likely to die by suicide and use substances to cope. You are a woman who has worked in this mental health profession in many ways. You've done assessments for police officers, first responders. You've done some reality TV assessments. You are now a private practice therapist and have a large amount of men on your caseload.
I do.
What are you observing out there?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I notice is the culture and the environments that certain men are in either hinder their ability to get support and get treatment, or they promote it. So certain environments that I've worked in, right, especially the first responder world, that being one of these super stigmatized, mental health is very separated from their work. That type of environment very much made it a barrier to entry when it came to mental health support. And the challenge with that then is that a lot of these people feel like they are on an island by themselves and don't have that connection or that ability to talk through things and recognize, hey, this is actually normal. All of my peers are also experiencing these same things because no one talked to each other about that. So the conversations were just different. But in general, I think culture and the environments that you are in play a massive role in terms of, one, how you see mental health and how you view it, but also in terms of how likely you are to get support or get therapy.
So many themes being discussed off the bat. And we're going to solve this problem right here on this podcast. But in all seriousness, it's in having this conversation that you try to zero in and understand what is actually occurring, since we know men are seeking mental health services far less than women. And you've touched on a lot of things. And maybe a place to start is sort of the messaging about masculinity, of what people get told. And this is where the term of toxic masculinity gets brought up a lot.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, even messages, I was told growing up, when I think about when does masculinity turn toxic? For me, it's when you're being confined to a certain set of very limited beliefs, behaviors, and actions that you are allowed to do, which then limits, sort of what you can't do.
Right.
And one of the first things that comes to mind for me is toughness. Of you have to be tough. And in all the ways that's told to me growing up is people don't want to hear about your suffering.
Yeah.
Suck it up. You got to be tough. You got to be strong. So if you're experiencing some sort of pain or difficulty, again, you got to be strong and tough through that.
Right. And that's something that is so common within our culture in general, right? That men have to be strong. They have to be tough. They have to be providers for a lot of people. And there's a certain responsibility, I think, and pressure that is associated with that, which I think takes even more of a toll on men in terms of their mental health, because there are a lot of these inherent pressures and factors that can lead to isolation. it makes me curious even for you and your experience, again, growing up, kind of hearing some of those messages, did that influence the way that you saw therapy?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think therapy was foreign for a lot of different reasons. One, it was the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know where you grew up out there, but like in the 90s, especially in the Midwest, like I didn't know anybody
Mm-hmm.
going to therapy. But even if you take therapy out of the picture and being like, okay, that really wasn't that popular. Maybe in New York it was, I don't know, or in big cities, it was starting to bubble up. But this idea of even communicating to another person
Mm-hmm.
the pain you're experiencing, just on that very basic fundamental level, I had zero models for that.
Right.
None at all. And again, when I say models, I mean other men.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my mom was a very warm, loving mom that had two kids very young,
Mm-hmm.
before the age of 20, both me and my brother. But when I think about what male figures modeled, expressing difficulty, that is definitely not my dad. Again, you'd never know
Right.
if he was struggling or something was wrong. Even when he had terminal cancer, didn't express anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about the depths that is of like me watching, my dad struggle with brain cancer twice,
Yeah.
not expressing anything. So if you can't express something as daunting as cancer, why the hell would you express something emotional? I'm stressed out.
Right.
I'm feeling frustrated. I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, as you threw out a lot of other themes that we'll touch on.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think too of if you can't even express how hard it is to be facing terminal cancer, I can't even imagine how isolating that must be. But on top of it, I bet a lot of people didn't necessarily ask him either, or ask you guys how you were dealing with a lot of that. Because I think in a lot of ways, there's this like, don't ask, don't poke the bear. We don't talk about those types of things. We don't talk about emotions. We don't talk about how, people are feeling in response to that. And I think there's this kind of bi-directional relationship there of like both things are happening at the same time, where people don't necessarily feel comfortable asking how you're feeling, and you don't want to share how you're feeling. So there's this inherent isolation that just naturally happens. And then you're really not receiving any support.
Right. It's the reinforcement,
Mm-hmm.
from many different angles. And yeah, another theme that you had brought up that's like ripe in the limits of like toxic masculinity is this hyper independence.
Mm-hmm.
Of
Yes.
it's certainly like when I think of like what's on the far other pole, it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a community. And I know it's often said with raising kids, but I think it should be said with doing life. Like if there's anything we know about research and longevity and all, the longitudinal studies we have, it's like the quality of your relationships
Mm-hmm.
is the number one predictor of your well-being. And yet, what do we in the toxic masculinity realm tell men? Figure it out.
Yeah.
It's on you.
Figure it out for yourself.
Ain't nowhere in there is it like lean in, talk to someone, let someone know what you experience. I never heard any of that.
Right.
Never.
And on top of it, do you even have the language for that? And that's something that you had shared too, of like, what models do you have for actually having the language to say, this is how I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm feeling upset, or I'm stressed, I'm angry. A lot of what I see, and again, this isn't, for every single male out there, but a lot of the men that I work with, none of them have ever experienced any healthy way of experiencing an emotion, right? It's just either I'm pissed or everything's fine, right? There's no other options out there. It's either I'm mad and I go to this extreme place, so that's even unsafe a lot of times, or I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah, both those things are very triggering. And you're right. Like it's about what is acceptable and what do you see other men doing.
Well, and I think that's the important piece too, is that men don't have less emotion,
No.
right? Men have the same emotion as everyone else. It's just not as acceptable or allowed to be talked about within the broader culture and what's conditioned.
And with all this being said, do I think we've come a long way?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And again, I always use the reference of like, I went through my entire primary education. The only thing that was anywhere close to a mental health topic being discussed, and it was like one time ever, was bullying.
Yeah.
There were
Yep.
anxiety, depression, trauma, none of this.
Right.
So do I have more faith in this upcoming generation that more of these conversations are happening? Sure, I do.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're still putting genders in traditional boxes, we're going to have the same consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, again, there's this lack of connection and this isolation that ends up happening, especially when we talk about that hyper independence and, you know, this notion that we have to be tough and face things on our own. And it, again, leads to this isolation, this separation. And then people don't always know what a normal, quote unquote, healthy emotion feels like, right? And this was something that I found really interesting. This was one of like the standout things that I realized when I was working with first responders was we often did like critical incident debriefings, right? So if there was like a shooting or an officer was involved in something that was, you know, pretty extensive and traumatic, we would go in and we would have these debriefings with them either individually or as a group. And one of the biggest things that we talked about was these are some of the normal things that you might experience over the next couple of weeks or so. Normal, healthy reactions to experiencing a traumatic event, right? Your sleep might be disrupted. Your mood might feel kind of dysregulated. You might have memories of that incident that pop up for you. And that is normal processing of a traumatic event. You're not, quote unquote, crazy if you're experiencing any of those things. And the reactions that we used to get were so fascinating because there were so many people that were like, oh, that's normal. I didn't know that that was like a normal thing. I thought it was like, you know, losing my marbles. And I'm like, no, you know, this is just how our brains process something super traumatic that you just experienced. And it made me realize too that because those discussions weren't happening in a lot of these departments, they didn't realize what was normal. And then they felt like they were on an island by themselves, which ended up with them spiraling into these bigger mental health episodes and difficulties because they thought that it was so extreme that they were having these very normal experiences.
Yeah, the power of psychoeducation and just creating space for normalizing, whether it's trauma, anxiety, stress. I mean, you could go on, but it's this hyper independence that gets created in a lot of different cultures that men find themselves in that, again, they're not known. Like the experiences that you're having, you're just stuffing down. And again, at best, maybe you're trying to listen to things that like motivate you. But it's often like the method is to stuff down and like plow forward.
Yes.
And be like, well, if I just keep plowing forward in this direction, this thing that I stuffed down will just evaporate over time.
Right. And this is where it's interesting because we do see some of these gender differences in terms of coping. And again, obviously, none of these things apply to every single, person out there. But trend-wise, males often tend to engage in more avoidant types of coping. So that's numbing, pushing things down, ignoring things, drinking or using substances, like you said, more externalizing types of behaviors, whether that is fighting or irritability, things along that line. Whereas for women, traditionally, the coping tools are much more connection oriented. I'm going to talk about it with a friend or a family member. I want to vent through this. I'm looking for help and support. And in doing that, there is this very big difference in terms of connection versus isolation.
Right. And I think, having a 5-year-old son, I think of the things, we're trying to do very imperfectly, by the way. Parenting it is hard as hell. But even at this really young age, it's like him having an emotion. It's like such hard lean in, especially from 2 psychologists. It's like, how would you name that?
Yeah.
We got the feelings poster on the wall in the room. But like the amount of times, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the last 6 months, he said, I'm a little bit nervous about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I never once said that in my life. Like never once in my life said I was a little. If I did say it, it was like, this is so 90s. I was about to like drop in on a cold pipe, and I like whispered it to my bro friend who was like, you're fine. You got an elbow pad on. Don't worry, you don't have a helmet.
You'll be fine.
Concussions weren't a thing in the 90s.
Oh my God.
But just hearing him say that, I'm like, wow. Again, we're far from perfect parents over here. But it's like instilling at a young age, I want to know about your emotional experience. And we certainly aren't, we don't say, oh, don't feel nervous.
Right.
Don't feel that way.
Right.
It's like we always are trying to reinforce that of like, yeah, what do you think's making you feel nervous? What are you feeling? What are you thinking about? And again, open the dialogue, hold the space.
Yeah.
And it's been such a difference, even for a 5-year-old. In the last 6 months, he's really leaned in. I've heard more emotional language out of him than, again, I can't even remember expressing.
Right.
Even in my first 25 years, maybe before even grad school.
Right. And even the coping tools, right? Like we did not learn how to, 1, feel an emotion or name an emotion, 2, how to cope with those emotions in any way, shape, or form. And I've heard from even clients or friends of mine that their kids are learning coping and emotional intelligence in school. And I'm like, this is amazing. I mean, obviously not every school does this, but even just having more of those open dialogues and conversations about mental health and feelings and how to cope and how to navigate certain things. And it's funny, even with parenting, even hearing him say oh, are you a little frustrated right now? Do you need to take some deep breaths? I'm like, yup, I sure do. You're right. I definitely need to take some deep breaths right now.
I was literally just thinking about that, of how it's turned into him calling us out. Why did daddy say that bad word? just called out a couple days ago. I was like, Dad's super frustrated right now. Needs to work on his deep breaths and go outside for a minute. But like, yeah, it's like his recognition of emotion in us.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what do you do about that then?
Right.
It's like, what are some ways that you can cope or name it and sort of, again, it does go back to that modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to like reflect a little bit of like, who are even the male models out there right now
Mm-hmm.
who sort of demonstrate that? And like, I went towards celebrities, but I think of like Michael B. Jordan's talked a lot about,
Mm-hmm.
going to therapy, Kevin Love within the basketball space, Kid Cudi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of like people who are at least Justin Bieber,
Yeah.
who it's like, it's not on any one of these people being like, oh, they're a perfect human being. It's like, none of us are.
No.
But at least in modeling, like, I struggle, I go through these hard times, I've
Mm-hmm.
hit these lows, and I've reached out for help, and it's benefited me.
Right. And I think you do this so well, especially when it comes to social media, right? Like you are such a model of that for a lot of people because I think you do hold some of these like quote unquote traditional gender norms, right? Of you're a strong, dude. And at the same time, you're able to talk about mental health and talking about therapy and talking about these conversations about how things impact you and how this is helpful and just breaking down a lot of those barriers by putting yourself out there and modeling that for other people. I think that's what we need more of. And I think you are someone who very much just does such a great job of opening up that conversation and making it feel safe.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I appreciate that first and foremost. Some of that's hard to absorb. But I appreciate in the effort of, and that's been a privilege of being able to like get the education I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
and be surrounded mainly in a field of women
Mm-hmm.
who model a different connecting path. And of course, there's always someone out there who's like, that wasn't my experience. And yeah, there's always family differences, there's cultural differences. But in general, it's like, especially being in the mental health field, women are just far more, not just in asking you how you're doing, but like really holding the space, following up, leaning in sort of normalizing.
Mm.
And again, it's not to say all, because I know that's, especially when I post these things on social media, there'll be a lot of men that come and be like, I opened up to this woman and, she told me to suck it up and that. And that's where I'm like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
everyone can be victim to the patriarchy and toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly is on all of us. Men have to do the changing. You have to be the one to lean forward and be
Mm-hmm.
authentic. No one can do that work for you. But in what we communicate back to men, oh yeah, that's on everyone.
Right.
That's not just on men.
Right.
That's on all of us. But yes, the traditional gender roles. And again, is there some people out there who they really enjoy that? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
In the aggregate, in the overall, is this good for anyone to be put in a box and have all these limitations put on them of how they're supposed to be? As a psychologist, no.
Right. And it makes me think too, even about when men do reach out for help and they do reach out for therapy, what they're actually drawn to, if they're drawn to a male therapist or a female therapist, or what feels more comfortable for them. Because I've heard kind of both sides, right? I've heard males being drawn to other males because it feels like, okay, I might be able to get away with, having more of these conversations that are plan oriented or goal oriented, or, this person can relate to me easier in certain ways. And I've also heard very much the opposite, where it's, I could never talk to another guy about how I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing. And I feel a lot safer talking about how I'm feeling or emotions or things that I might be going through with a woman because it just feels safer.
Yeah, I always hypothesize, I think, and I don't have the data here, but I often think and see the connection of like who you were close to sort of emotionally and who held space for you. You tend to lean towards that person.
Yeah.
Although I think you gain more from the work aspect
Yeah.
if you sort of pick the opposite of what you didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, I've only had women therapists.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm overdue. I've said that before on this podcast. Maybe I'm overdue, to have a male therapist. But even for me, like reflecting inward on that, it just feels more foreign.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels, and I think I would experience probably, not saying like I would experience personal growth within that because it is foreign.
Right.
And I would get to experience something different from a male. And with that being said, I do feel like the friendships I have with men, especially coming from the mental health space, they are far more connecting, holding space, and a lot more curiosity than I would if I were not in the mental health space.
Totally. And I think that's important too, even again, because environment is so important within mental health and being able to feel safe talking about that or seeking out support. I think it is truly so important to kind of check in with the environments that you're in and see which ones you feel a bit safer talking about certain things or going to friends or peers or colleagues. And this was something that was also really interesting working with first responders, especially, was the departments that we worked with where leadership had actually talked to their department about mental health and talked about their own experiences of either going to therapy, seeking support, talking to peers. Those people in those departments had exponentially higher rates of going to therapy, talking to other people within their department, and just overall way better coping and mental health. Fascinating.
Super fascinating. And I think that's why, in so many ways, we need more women leaders and we need people modeling something different. And right now, especially in America, we have the dead opposite. We have this hyper masculinity, name calling, belittling, othering. And it's like, what impact does that have on the psyche of men in general, but like young men? I spend way too much time late at night thinking about that. But I appreciate you framing it in the positive of like the experiences that you've observed, because I agree
Yeah.
of like when there's models of people holding space for something different, everybody can not just feel something different, but feel encouraged to step forward and be like, oh, it's normal. Like this leader, this person who has power, whether earned or unearned or whatever,
Yeah.
is at least modeling something different of like, there's space for me to have a difficult time, to feel something and to talk about it.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's why that is one of those things that can be so helpful, even moving forward, trying to change some of those conversations, is really being able to model some of that for other people, right? And even from my perspective, I'm thinking, okay, what rooms can I get myself into that I can have conversations with people about mental health and have it be more normalized and not this woo-woo taboo kind of, out there type of conversation, so that people can feel a bit safer when it comes to mental health and when it comes to therapy, because I think there are just so many misconceptions out there about mental health and therapy and what that looks like and what that means if you go to therapy and what that process even looks like, right?
I think that's so important to consider because, like, even the people right now listening to this episode, we appreciate you. But is this podcast going to land on the ears that would be most helpful? Because of the era of echo chamber and algorithm, it's hard. And that's what it's like, such a thoughtful reflection. It makes me think of like all the people out there who sort of have a general reach. Certainly when you create content, there's always a possibility it may reach someone who really needs to hear it. I think because of the algorithms being how they are, it's harder for that to happen. But like this conversation, I hope reaches the teachers, you know, the caregivers, the parents, the grandparents, the people who are like having an impact
Right.
in modeling and holding space for, you know, young men, boys, of like what is possible versus it just feeling, again, limited in that traditional sense.
And I think even, again, like changing the conversations and what that looks like. And I've realized too that the way that even we in our field frame certain things with therapy can hit very differently and can hit different, you know, genders or populations differently, right? So if we frame therapy as this, you know, woo-woo cry
What do you mean by
session.
woo-woo? You keep saying woo-woo. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I've heard this a lot.
I don't know what woo-woo means.
From some of the males that I have worked with, especially, of they can have this misperception that therapy is this space that you just go and sit and just turn into a puddle of mush on the floor, and that there's no structure and that you just fall apart, and that is the only part of therapy, and it is this out there spiritual kind of, you know, path that you are taking. And while some people have different styles, obviously, and might, you know, be more holistic and be more incorporating of certain spiritual aspects, there are also very structured ways that we can approach therapy. And it doesn't have to be only this overly emotional, touchy-feely, you know, I have to be constantly, you know, talking about my childhood trauma only, and, you know, feeling very uncomfortable and unsafe sitting in those conversations. So a lot of times, and I'm curious about your perspective on this, working with males or beginning working with males versus females, sometimes the frame is different or the structure feels like it's more important for certain males that are coming in either for the first time or that have some of these kind of conceptions about therapy. And I've noticed that that can be helpful, especially in the beginning, to feel like there's more structure, to feel like there's more tools that we're using and skills that we're building, as opposed to this more unstructured, uncomfortable space for them.
Yeah. Explaining why. I mean, that's it.
Right.
And I'm with you of like, more so than not, yeah. Do women need to know what the point of vulnerability is? Not more than men.
Yeah.
Meaning, we know those who suppress their emotions and stuff them down have worse mental health outcomes, period. Higher cortisol levels, again, like not coping and not understanding themselves.
Right.
But I think in just a few different adjectives, you can explain why authenticity is very important to a male.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know you. And if they don't know you, they can't connect with you.
Mm-hmm.
They can't collaborate with you. They can't help you on your dreams, on your goals.
Right.
Or again, just to have the company of, which I'm with you, a lot of the stereotypical frame things in therapy, men might not understand the why,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of men, whether they admit it or not, they are lonely.
Yes.
So when you explain to them of like all that disconnection you feel, your desire to be a part of a team and, you know, not just on the team, but understood and valued, that can't happen when people don't know who the fuck you are.
Right.
And that's, again, in the essence of framing it and sort of like understanding, why is it we do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it we talk about things that are hard to talk about?
Yeah.
Why is it that even me expressing that, you know, I'm really stressed about money right now, or I'm having a hard time, you know, envisioning my future, I'm feeling lost.
Mm-hmm.
This hyper independence that you are just in isolation going to figure everything out is anti our species.
Right.
Literally not how we've evolved and gotten here.
Mm-hmm.
We have evolved in groups, in teams, in collaboration with.
Right.
But you are so special. You're going to figure this all out on your own in this whole lifetime. None of us can.
Right.
And I still, in all the motivational bros that are out there, and I see the content, those are the messages that are still being passed. You on your own through stoicism will figure this all out.
Mm-hmm.
It's BS. It is.
Yep. And again, I think holding this frame that you can still be yourself going to therapy. You don't have to, therapy doesn't make you a weak person. And I think there is this connotation that if I go to therapy, it means I'm weak and I couldn't handle this on my own.
Right. That's it.
And the reality is, the way that I see it anyway, I think a lot of people are stronger because they go to therapy and more themselves and deepening that relationship with themselves authentically because they go to therapy and they're able to reach their goals and feel connected and feel supported and feel like they can do more of the things that they want to do and feel more connected through therapy. Going to therapy or talking about mental health doesn't make you a weak or, you know, incompetent person. It means that you are emotionally intelligent enough to want to continue your own growth in some way, shape, or form.
That's it. It's about growth. Like, full stop. It's just about growing as a human. And that's one thing I feel like women have done such a heavy lifting on that I observe, especially on social media, of ad nauseum encouraging men to be like, go to therapy. It is growth. We want that for you.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it's on all of us in many ways. Those are the messages for like a lot of men to absorb.
Yeah.
Of like, I see those posts all the time from women out there explaining of like, I don't care what your boys tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Women want a man who can communicate what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, because it creates more connection.
Mm-hmm.
It creates more understanding.
Yes, 100%. I'm curious from a male lens and a male perspective, what are some of the ways that people can bring up therapy in a safe way that maybe males can understand or hear that doesn't come across as threatening?
There's part of me that wants to say just because something feels threatening doesn't mean it's not good for you. I think that, and maybe I'm too far that direction of like, some things are going to be triggering. Doesn't mean you shouldn't listen. Doesn't mean you shouldn't experience them. But yes, I think the frames and the adjectives we use and how we describe things certainly like go with some of these traditional masculine like terms of like you want to grow in your life, right? You want to keep bettering yourself, right? This idea that is strictly through hyper independence and that toughness means suppression, avoidance. I think you can lean in hard and use a lot of traditional masculinity things of like toughness is leaning in and doing the difficult thing. The difficult thing is actually going towards your authentic being because you're not being authentic now.
Right.
I understand the why. I get it. This is not something that's modeled for you. Maybe we can look at a lot of the male figures in your life or in your feed and you're like, I don't see any of that. I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you. There's a high cost there though. There's a high cost because in the journey of life, you're going to run into problems. You're going to run into things that you can't solve on your own. Does not make you weak at all. It's the reality of having to live.
Right. 100%. Yeah, I think a lot about how we can help to bridge this gap. And obviously, modeling is a huge piece of that, which is something that, again, I think you do so well, especially when it comes to social media. And even in terms of parenting, right? Like being able to, like we were talking about, have these conversations with our kids and being able to say, these are okay conversations to have and talking through certain things and being able to even show our kids, I feel these things, or I'm frustrated in this moment, or I'm sad, I'm upset, and these are the things that I'm doing to try to help myself to feel better, right? Depending on how old the kid is and what the language that you use is. But these are some of the things that I think about in terms of our society and our culture as a whole, right? Because this isn't male's fault, right? This isn't an episode where it's men are trash and, this is what's wrong with men by any means. It's more about how can we help in general to kind of bridge that gap within the systems and the culture, and even being able to make these differences, even if it's just for one person, right? Whether it's your kid or a friend or a family member or yourself, right? That actually starts to make that change happen.
I'm glad you mentioned so many things in there. We are full believers that people are allowed to feel how they feel. And again, when I see what I'm about to say on social media, I genuinely feel that way because I'm like, I don't know what this person's gone through.
Right.
Like when I see someone posting, men are trash, men are terrible, there's that space that I hold in my mind. I'm like, I don't know what they've been through.
Yeah.
And I may never know, but I hold that space. And it's a big and. Ain't no way that is the message that's going to lead to growth.
Right.
So I hope you hear both sides of that. You're allowed to feel how you feel. I'm not going to try to correct that. And in the overall, and that's where I feel a lot of personal responsibility as a man in the, mental health space. Telling someone they're trash is not motivating at all for growth. If it were, therapy would look real different. You're terrible. You're a piece of trash. They're like, oh, I better change everything. it usually pushes people further that direction.
Right.
And that's a hard thing. And again, there's not an easy answer here because people are allowed to express, I'm pissed at men. I think they're trash. Okay.
Yeah.
And then a lot of us have to come to the other side of like, what are we doing to get people towards change? And men have to take that opportunity. That's the part that's fully on men. You have to take the opportunity. I'll give you a real life example. I'm coaching 5 and 6 year old soccer. 5 and 6 year old soccer. It's all, boys. 5 and 6 year olds. I am someone that when a very traditional masculine sense, when I'm about to do something, feel like it's all on me. That's the natural tendency that comes over me. It's all on me.
Yep.
I better stay up late, look at every drill that's possible, order the best cleats for my kid that I can afford, and like get this all set up. The cleats didn't come in time for the first practice. And I'm flipping out of like, oh no, full crash out. This is me cursing, like losing my mind. And you're like, why don't I see if anything can be like overnighted? Because I'm so worried, like, our kid isn't the type of kid who gets into sports. I'm like, this is real important. The start is real important, the frame. Like, let me just look. I'll see if there's others. And I'm like, there's not. I looked. There's nothing out there that can fix this situation. This is bad. And I'm in over control mode. Over control. Everything has to go perfectly. It's all on me. I take a little bit of a beat. I pace around outside and I come back in. You're like, I found some cleats that are going to be here tomorrow. And I'm like, thank you so much. The story goes on. I coached the first practice and the first game weekend all on my own. We have 10 kids. And I'm running around like wild with 10, 5, and 6 year olds, setting up cones, trying to organize, do all these things. And it's a lot. It's a lot on one person to hold that attention, keep them like in the progression. And I'm like, well, it's just on me. That's all on me. And this last practice, one of the other dads came up and was like, hey, do you need any help? My first reaction, what literally came out of my mouth, like, oh no, I appreciate it's all right. A literal psychologist.
Yeah.
That's my first reaction. It's all right. No, I'm running around like my head cut off trying to wrangle these 10, 5, and 6 year olds who just want to run around and be chaotic. Why wouldn't they? I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, no, I have experience in youth sports. I can help you. And I literally paused there, took an awkward beat, and I go, you know what? Let's do it. And I can't, if you're listening, you're like, oh, you might feel like this is small or whatever. What I'm explaining to you is every natural instinct I had throughout each one of these was, it's all on me.
Yep.
No one can help me. I just have to figure it out. We had a great practice with this help from one other person. And I literally thanked him at the end. I go, thank you so much. That made a huge difference. And he was like, I think you were doing a great job. And he was like, but I just wanted to be helpful. And again, there's something about that that's like, yeah, that's what we need more of. And it goes against your instincts of like, well, since I wasn't able to do it all on my own, did I do a good job? And I don't feel that way. But the initial pull is all to figure it out on your own. Do it by yourself.
And I love that you shared that too, because I feel like this is definitely something that has taken up a lot of like mental and emotional space for you recently. And it is one that just so accurately depicts how our cultural and societal pressures just really make a lot of these internal dialogues that men hear feel so responsible for everything and everyone around them. And that's something that I hear so often that I don't think men talk about enough is I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. I feel like I need to not just take care of myself and be quote unquote strong for myself, but I need to take care of my family. I need to take care of all the people in my, department or my company or my, team or my this or my that. There's so much pressure on men in particular to always have it all together and always do everything perfectly and to be responsible and to, be the stable person. And that pressure just naturally is going to be internalized, right? And so, even for you, again, being a psychologist and having the knowledge that you do and being the emotionally intelligent human that you are, even being able to recognize, like, this was still my automatic thought and the feelings that I had is so huge because you, as someone with awareness, still had that and still feel that pressure and can feel consumed by that. Imagine the people who have very little emotional intelligence or awareness or haven't had any of the education that we have, right? It is very easy to get completely caught up in that and to continue to spiral and beat yourself up and tell yourself all of these like awful things and be super critical of yourself. And in reality, there are so many things and so many people that might be willing to help or might have an alternative solution or a different way of looking at things or, aren't thinking that same critical, hyper independent way of you and holding you to these standards that you're holding yourself to, right? And so I just really appreciate that example and like you talking through that because it is one that just so accurately highlights how those cultural pressures get so internalized within us that a lot of times we don't even realize when they're coming up. And that is why I think a lot of times there is this defensiveness that often can come up for men, especially when it comes to mental health or getting help or accepting help, even because it feels like, oh God, no, I have to do everything on my own.
You said it all. And especially that last point of like, if you were told your whole life from the age you're a young child of it's on you, figure it out. What's the natural draw to therapy?
Right. That feels like there's something so wrong that I cannot do what I was supposed to do
Right.
or uphold this standard that was placed on me and entrusted within me. And so, as a therapist, I often hold that space for the men that are coming in to see me. And while I may not necessarily say that in those words, I think it's so important that we're able to truly acknowledge those things and hold space for men in that way and understand a lot of times that sometimes that defensiveness or that initial fear or anxiety that comes up when it comes to accepting help or asking for help or talking through mental health or going to therapy, a lot of times it's not because they are so resistant and so anti anything that could be helpful and positive and touchy feely and feelings, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times it's coming from a place of, I'm scared and this feels really uncomfortable and I feel like I'm failing and that's the only reason that I'm here.
Well, that's a credit. It's such a credit to you. Like every time we get contact from another man in our emails and they've selected Dr. Jackie, I'm never surprised. And again, personally in our relationship, you know, you've always been that way of like when I brought up anything emotional, difficult, having a tough time, you always create that space and hold that and get curious about it. I've never once, not to once, have felt I brought something up emotional where I was being authentic in my vulnerability, where it felt like you were punting it or throwing it back in my face. Not a single time.
Well, I'm glad that you feel that, because that is something that for me is so important, that I'm able to hold that space for everyone, right? Like we've all had our experiences and we all have our stuff and we're all human. And I think it's important that even for me as a woman, I can recognize and hold space for men in that way. And that they feel like I'm not coming at you on the offense. I'm not attacking you, and I'm not thinking all of these things that you're thinking about you, right? Because I'm not.
Right. Right. And I think that's sort of the question I'd ask you because, again, there's plenty of people out there, you know, all different genders, identify in all different ways that have a man in their life that they would like to encourage to get some help. You know, what do you think of? Like, what are some of the words or ways to approach that?
Yeah. I mean, my approach has always kind of been one of broaching things with curiosity and trying to foster a safe space to have conversations. And it's not about telling someone what they have to do or giving them an ultimatum, because usually those are the conversations that kind of backfire. And it's funny because, like, even some of the conversations that we've had, right, where the more preachy I can get, the more you're like, no, not doing that, or I'm not taking that supplement, or I'm not taking the Advil, or I'm not whatever it is, right?
When you start with that, yeah, you're right about that. When you start with that,
So some of that is my own learned experience, right? So I think it's important, again, just to approach the people in our life that we want to encourage to seek help and seek guidance and seek support by showing that support, by fostering those safe spaces and letting people know, hey, I care about you. I'm a little concerned, or I care about you. Let's talk about what's been going on, or normalizing that you've been dealing with a lot. I'm not really sure how you're, getting through all of this. I think it could be helpful, whether it's talking to me or friends or, people that you feel comfortable with, or whether it's talking to a mental health professional that can give you some tools, can give you some skills. But oftentimes that conversation has to start with curiosity and safety, not you have to do this or this is the right thing for you.
right. It is. It goes back to a word we've used a lot in this episode, and that's modeling. It's like, I don't have to be someone's therapist, but am I modeling some of those values? Am I creating some curiosity, some openness, holding some space for, like, again, where someone might want to disclose some difficult things? Or am I keeping that door shut because it feels different for me?
Right. And even being able to model that, whether that's for a friend or a partner or a family member, by even sharing your own experiences can be something that helps them to also feel comfortable and safe. And it doesn't have to be that you have to dump your life story or anything like that, but even just saying something as simple as, I've been through some hard things too, or I've been through experiences that made me feel really alone, and, talking to people helped. And
Right.
I'm hoping that maybe I can have some of those conversations with you, or I'm seeing that you're also going through a lot right now, and I'm wondering what can be helpful for you.
I love it. And that's where I feel like, again, us as men, there's so much room for growth in there of like modeling your own authenticity, talking openly about your own struggles. It goes such a long way that like it's a short list of, celebrities and people out there who lean into that area. But it does. It has a huge impact, not just on younger people, but people right now who are like, oh, I'm also experience that or going through a hard time. And
Right.
again, I'm not seeing anyone who is like me talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've fixed men. That's done.
Check.
Check in the box. This episode, no, we hope that you continue this conversation, and it is really nuanced. And again, we hope you take some things away, and maybe you got a man out there you'd like to send this to, or someone who cares for a young boy or a young man. And how do we bridge this gap towards what we normally give messages towards men, and open up the door for new experiences, new connections, and room for their own authenticity to come out.
Love that.
Hey, we love a rate, a review, a comment. It really helps out this podcast so much. But we'll see you right here next week on Drop In.
Bye.
Peace.